Okay, so let's play a bit of catch up here. So today is Monday. We'll be going over the first PowerPoint of the psychoactive drugs. We will be going over the second PowerPoint on November 23rd. And so I took a poll the last time we were in class together because I wanted to make sure that we had a learning environment that everybody would like for that day, but also I know there's a lot going on. Maybe you're in quarantine, maybe, friends that are in quarantine, maybe you're ready to go home, whatever that is. And I totally understand that. So what we're going to do for the November 23rd day is you're not required to come to class. You're welcome to join on Zoom or watch it on your own. But if you would like to be in person, the first 12 people to send me an email that say, hey, I'd like to be in person on the 23rd, you're more than welcome. I will be there in person, but I will not make you guys come in. Just maybe that you don't feel comfortable right now, or you need that day to take a nap and watch the YouTube later that evening. I'm trying to be a little bit understanding there. Okay, so I'm going to put that in the chat. Okay. And then I am out of quarantine tomorrow. So on Wednesday, we have our normal lab. On Wednesday, the 18th, we are doing, this is your brain on drugs. And we do a lot of fun activities. It's kind of more so playing games, which is a lot of fun. I'm going to preface it with this. If you do not feel comfortable coming into lab, that is completely fine. You can join via Zoom, but I'm going to leave it up to you that you have to let me know ahead of time if you do not feel comfortable coming into lab for that activity. The activity is totally social distance, everything. Everybody's wearing masks obviously as normal, but if for some reason that you're just not feeling comfortable coming into lab, please just send me an email and join via Zoom. If you don't send me the email and you join via Zoom, that's a little bit of some miscommunication there. Because I want you guys to make sure that you're advocating for yourself if that's something you don't feel comfortable with is coming into that. So I'll put email if you don't feel comfortable joining in person. There still will be a lab quiz on Wednesday as normal. It opens up at 1, closes at 11:55. You have 45 minutes to take it. It's on my Wartburg. All right, so those a couple of things. On November 20th, which is Friday, we don't have class because another section, a different class needs our classroom, which is totally fine. So we don't have class on Friday. Study for another exam if you have it. Take a nap, whatever you need to do. And then, like I said, on November 23rd, you can join via Zoom if you'd like to. I will be in person if you'd like to be in person, because I know some people really like that environment. The first 12 people to email me can be in person, okay? And I also won't require the live Zoom on the 23rd. If you'd like to watch the YouTube at a separate time that works for you, maybe you have another exam to study for, maybe you're headed home, whatever that may be. I'm just trying to be as understanding as possible right now. Does anybody have any questions about that setup? All right. Our final is, I keep forgetting the date because it's December. Oh, what day is it? December 2nd? I have it on my calendar. Just a second. December. There we go. This is December 3rd. All right, the final is December 3rd. It's on my Wartburg. You can take it anytime between 7 a.m. and 11:55 p.m. on that day. It's at 2-hour time cap unless you have accommodations. Two-hour time cap. We can spend any time during the second half of any of the next couple of lectures talking about that final if you need to. There's also a study guide on my Wartburg. All right. We're going to go ahead and move on to the presentation about psychoactive drugs. And here we are. Okay, so our points to ponder today. We're going to name the 4 categories of psychoactive drugs. So there are psychoactive drugs, but there's different categories. A lot of these you maybe have heard of, but we're going to kind of dive a little bit deeper into maybe how the body reacts to them, or some symptoms or some negative side effects and things like that. We're going to talk about how stimulants affect the heart rate and the respiration and blood pressure. We're going to give some examples of those stimulants. We're going to talk about depressants and how they affect the heart rate, respiration, and blood pressure, and some examples of depressants. We're going to talk about how narcotics affect the body, and also how hallucinogens affect the body. Here are the 4 different types or categories of psychoactive drugs. The first one is stimulants. So stimulants being nicotine, caffeine, amphetamines, cocaine. Okay, I know it's kind of silly that caffeine and cocaine are in the same category here, but what stimulants do is, the key word here is like stimulate, or when you have something that is stimulating. Maybe you're in class and the TV's going and your roommate's talking and the fan's going. That can be a lot of stimuli. You can say that about kids too. When kids are really distracted, they may have a lot of stimuli. So stimulants are things that are going to kind of heighten your experience of, maybe that be like caffeine, where you have a more awake feeling. Maybe some people are like, I have to have caffeine every day. Some people are like, oh, I don't drink caffeine at all, or things like that, whether that be like pop or coffee. These are the amphetamines. These are the things that are going to kind of increase, we're going to talk about that in a little bit, increase your heart rate, increase your alertiveness, and not necessarily in a good way for some of those drugs. Then you have sedatives or depressants. Okay. The way I remember this one is kind of the word depress. When you depress something, maybe when you're talking about, squishing something down, but you can also talk about like the chemical imbalance of depression or being depressed. This is the things that are going to like lower your heart rate a little bit, and they're going to affect your body in the opposite way that a stimulant would. You've maybe heard of the opioid crisis. That's what we're talking about in this next section here. You have opioids and analgesics. These are different sensations of pain relief, and how they can also be abused in different ways. And then you have hallucinogens, I don't know why I keep trying to say the longer word, hallucinogens, like your LSD, your THC, and your marijuana. These are things that will make you hallucinate, essentially. So stimulants, they're going to speed up the central nervous system. And maybe that's why people have coffee in the morning, or sometimes even in the afternoon, right? That's that caffeine kick we want when somebody needs caffeine, or, oh, I need caffeine. They're thinking, man, I'm feeling sleepy. I need something to kind of wake me up, kind of make me more alert. Caffeine, while maybe it doesn't really damage your body to an extent, in moderation, it can actually damage your body. And we'll talk about that in the next couple of slides. Somebody who intakes too much caffeine can see an increase in heart rate. Normally somebody's resting heart rate can be anywhere between like 55 to 65 or 70 beats per minute, depending on the individual's age, weight, and like how active their lifestyle is. With caffeine, you are increasing that resting heart rate. And most of the time, your body wants to conserve energy as much as possible and be the most efficient it can be, in the event that it needs to use energy to fight or flight, or to, think for an exam or walk across campus. When you increase that resting heart rate, your heart doesn't have a chance to rest as much because of it being an increased heart rate. Over time, if somebody intakes too much caffeine, and they see a gradual increase of that resting heart rate to a heart rate that you maybe would see if you were walking or things like that. When you're walking, if you have an Apple Watch or a smartwatch, check your heart rate sometime. It's usually like 80, 90, depending how fast you're walking, beats per minute. And so over time, your heart's going to get tired. It's going to kind of affect the walls of your veins and your arteries and things like that. Now, I don't want you to go home and be like, oh my gosh, I have to quit drinking coffee every morning. That's not essentially it. I'm talking about when people are intaking thousands and thousands of milligrams of caffeine that are really damaging to the body system. If you have 2 cups of coffee a day, I think you're going to be totally fine. You have nicotine. You've probably heard about nicotine maybe in your like high school health class, or if you had DARE when you were in high school. Nicotine is found in a lot of tobacco products. It can also be found in vape. Nicotine is an addictive drug. This is the drug that your body claims that it needs more of. So it can be found in cigarettes and chewing tobacco and a lot of other things. But nicotine is a stimulant. Cocaine, also known as crack, you've maybe seen it in a movie or things like that about what people experience when they are experiencing cocaine. You can maybe see from a movie or something that the person is very hyper, ultra stimulated. I know I use that word again, stimulated, meaning that it just feels like it's very hyper, kind of speeding up that heart rate, making everything be kind of intense. Amphetamines and methamphetamines, if you've ever heard of meth, that's what methamphetamine stands for. These are also other types of stimulants that are going to increase that heart rate and have different effects. And we'll talk about those a little bit more as we go on. So caffeine. Supposedly, it's the most popular and widely consumed drug in the world. Now, some of you on your lecture assignments said nicotine, and I didn't take points off for that because I also believe it's caffeine and nicotine, and I can believe that how that can get mixed up. So I never took off points for that for this instance here. But caffeine is derived from the chemical family called xanthines, which are found in plant products such as coffee, tea, and chocolate. Yes, in your tea that you drink. Oh, man, I'm getting a little highlighter happy again. In the tea that you drink or the chocolate that you eat, there is a small amount of caffeine. Caffeine can give you that enhanced mental alertness. So you're up studying late for finals, you go grab that iced coffee or that Coca-Cola or your Pepsi. It's going to reduce that feeling of fatigue. There also is some things though in coffee that or maybe some of these other drinks like pop or things like that, that can counteract that to a sense. So if you go to the store or to the den or wherever you're going and you grab just a regular Coca-Cola, yes, it has caffeine in it, but it also has some sugar and some salt and things like that that are going to affect your body in different ways. Having a black coffee, I don't like coffee personally, but the black coffee is technically the most healthy version of that. Now there's other things that you can consider healthy, but things like if you go get a Frappuccino from Starbucks, that's 400 to 500 calories. Your body will also react to that sugar that it's having as well, and that so-called sugar crash that we talk about. So while there is caffeine in some of these things, thinking of like a milk chocolate bar, it has sugar in it as well as the caffeine. So just keeping that in mind. The side effects, you may feel wakefulness. Maybe you've heard somebody say, oh, I can't have caffeine after 5 o'clock or after 7 o'clock because then I have, I'm awake for a long time, or I have insomnia where I can't feel like I go to sleep. You may, if you have too much caffeine, have an irregular heartbeat. You may feel dizzy or nausea, indigestion, mild delirium, and heartburn. Caffeine meets the requirements for addiction. So somebody can be addicted to caffeine. the tolerance and psychological dependence, and it also has withdrawal symptoms. So this is essentially the requirements for somebody who's addicted to caffeine. Now, I don't think if you are addicted to having coffee that you are considered a caffeine addict. There's probably a more extreme version of that, but if you find somebody who is having a very kind of high tolerance to caffeine, they have to have 4 or 5 cups of coffee to feel the effects, or maybe they have psychological dependence, they can't start their day without it, or when they don't have coffee or caffeine, they have withdrawal symptoms. Maybe that's something to reconsider. This is just showing the different types of caffeine and the milligrams of caffeine in them. So I talked a little bit ago about like having thousands and thousands of milligrams that could really affect your heart rate and the walls of your arteries and veins, your resting heart rate, things like that. If you have 1 cup of gourmet coffee, so if you go to Starbucks, you go to Scooters, you go to Dunkin', that cup of coffee probably has about 260 milligrams. A no dose is a over-the-counter. It is a max strength, so you can take a caffeine supplement that could help give you some energy. That could have up to about 200 milligrams of caffeine, depending on the brand and things like that. If you were to just make a generic brand of coffee, you know, what is that? Folgers? Is that Folgers? Is that what you guys consider basic coffee these days? The coffee is generic. It has about 95 milligrams. Working our way down, a Red Bull energy drink has about 80 milligrams. An espresso at a restaurant is 64 milligrams. A black tea, 47 milligrams. And then a regular Coca-Cola or Pepsi, or even a Diet Pepsi or Diet Coke, will have about 34 milligrams. So just being aware that maybe you shouldn't have 4 cups of Starbucks gourmet coffee that day because you could get into too much caffeine consumption. Nicotine is also the most addictive drug, up there with caffeine. Okay, so the reason our body is so addicted to caffeine and nicotine is our body strives for the hormones that are kind of given off with what these give us. So that caffeine, it gives you that wakefulness, it gives you that alertness. It may boost your mood to an extent, but too much caffeine, maybe somebody's ever had the jitters before, or maybe you start to feel really anxious when you have too much caffeine. Same thing can go with nicotine. It's a stimulant derived from a tobacco plant, and that stimulates the neurons that release dopamine that reinforces the dependent of the drug. So dopamine, it's making us kind of, it's something that we look forward to. We're happy when we have it. And that's nicotine, which can, you know, have negative side effects from the tobacco plants or things like that. But our body registers that with a happy hormone. It adversely affects a developing embryo or fetus. This is why pregnant women or women trying to get pregnant should not smoke or use tobacco products because of the effects of the developing embryo or fetus. Smoking can increase the heart rate and the blood pressure. So you've maybe had your blood pressure taken before. The average healthy individual or a healthy adult has about a 120/60 blood pressure. Now that's average. But your blood pressure fluctuates all day long. You can also have a white coat syndrome, which my boyfriend has white coat syndrome. When he goes to the doctor, his blood pressure is always higher because he's nervous about it. So that doesn't necessarily mean that he has high blood pressure all the time. But, you know, maybe when you go to the doctor's office, you get nervous, your blood pressure can raise. It depends on the time of day, whether or not you're digesting food or if you're working out or you just got done sleeping. Your blood pressure can change all the time, but smoking can increase it over time. And when you have too high or too low of a blood pressure, it can affect your heart, your veins, and your blood vessels. When your blood pressure is too high, I think of it like this. If you're at a water park and you're going down the water slide and it's really fun, but try putting 4 people down the water slide at the same time. The pressure could affect the blood the blood veins and walls, you know, you could break the water slide, I don't know. But just thinking about when there's more pressure on the walls of your arteries and your veins, it's going to affect things in the long term. It could deteriorate them. It could increase plaque buildup, things like that. When you increase your resting heart rate over time, your heart is working harder than it has to. Maybe you've also, I'm just thinking of another example of like high intensity interval training. When somebody does that type of workout, or like HIIT workout, where you like increase your heart rate and then you rest, and you increase your heart rate and then you rest. That's really good for your heart because you're working hard, but you're also making sure that you're having a good recovery and resting. So that's kind of a little bit about your heart rate and blood pressure. But when you use nicotine or smoking and it increases that heart rate, not that you want it to, and increasing that blood pressure, not when you want it to, it can have some adverse effects over time. It can also cause a psychological and physiological dependency. Most of the time, people who use tobacco or cigarette products are addicted to them. And even though we have a lot of research now that says that smoking and using tobacco can lead to different various forms of cancer or sickness, most of the time people who are using these products are so addicted that they can't stop. Here's just a little bit about a cigarette and the different chemicals that are in the cigarette, and a little bit about how these are they're carcinogenic substances, so things that could cause cancer. So not only does the smoke that could possibly be getting into the person's lungs, or even secondhand smoke, some of the actual product of the cigarette and having that in a person's mouth can also cause cancer. Like this is arsenic, which is a lethal poison. Maybe you've heard of that in like a murder novel or a TV show. I'm trying to think of other ones you guys may know. Methanol, this is used for rocket fuel. Polonium-210 is a radioactive element. Vinyl chloride is used to make plastic materials. Carbon monoxide is found in exhaust fumes. So just a lot of different chemicals that are not good for the body. So here's a couple of pictures of some cocaine or crack. It is derived from leaves of South America, the cocoa shrub. All right, this is a white crystalline pattern. So crystalline just meaning it's kind of, I would consider like salt and sugar to also be crystallized. If you were to look at it under a microscope, it would kind of look like pieces of ice, essentially. Cocaine rapidly enters the bloodstream. Okay, and we can kind of understand that our bloodstream and the way that our body is using our bloodstream can happen very quickly. It can cause a rush of sensation that lasts for about 5 to 30 minutes. There's an extreme physical dependence with this drug. This drug is illegal. And it can cause, like it says, extreme physical dependence. It can also really harm the body in negative ways. When you have, or when somebody experiences cocaine, it makes them feel energetic, talkative, alert. All right, think of caffeine, but times 10 to 100 times more than that. You're more aware of senses. So increases in sound, touch, sight, sexuality. These are all things that I'm talking about, that stimuli experience, that stimulus. It can increase self-control and confidence. So somebody can feel a little bit more confident when they're on cocaine. High doses can cause panic attacks, a psychotic episode, maybe they're behaving in psychotic ways. Paranoia, meaning that they're just extremely paranoid or worried to the extent, and violent behavior. When somebody is on cocaine, their blood vessels thicken and constrict. It reduces the flow of oxygen to the heart. Heart muscles work harder, and it can lead to a heart attack or stroke. So we're thickening those blood vessels, and it's constricting that blood flow of oxygen to the heart. And because that heart is not getting enough oxygen, it starts to work harder. This also happens when you're not necessarily comparing cocaine to exercising, but think when you're exercising, you're moving your arms, maybe you're moving your legs, and your heart starts to pump a little bit harder. It's because more oxygen is needed to your extremities to move those muscles and things like that. So your heart works harder to pump pump that blood. What your heart is experiencing here is that thickening of the blood vessels because of the cocaine or crack or whatever you want to call it. It reduces the oxygen to that heart. So your heart's thinking, man, I'm not getting enough oxygen to my brain. I need to pump harder. And that's essentially what can happen here. And if that body is not prepared or ready for that, it can cause a heart attack or a stroke. It raises blood pressure and it can explode and weaken the blood vessels in the brain, which is essentially like what we said here with a stroke. Even a small amount of cocaine can lead to an overdose. These overdoses can cause seizures or heart failure, so essentially brain and heart failure. Snorting cocaine can cause sinus infection or a loss of smell. Amphetamine is another stimulant, and these are synthetic agents that are short-acting stimulants. So this is like Ritalin or Adderall, which are used for attention deficit hyperactivity disorders. They enhance synaptic levels of the adrenaline and the dopamine in the brain. Okay, so this is one of those that some people, it's not illegal because some people actually need it. Some people who have ADHD, who have a hard time maybe focusing in school or on homework, or for behavioral reasons, they may take Ritalin or Adderall or Folacin, which are used for the attention deficit disorder, and their doctor prescribes it. This is not something that you can get over the counter. The side effects of these medications include the loss of appetite, weight loss, sleep problems, and irritability. It requires frequent dosing because it is a short-acting stimulant and it has a high potential for abuse. What this means is people take it when it's not prescribed to them, or they take too much of the prescription, and it can be addictive. Methamphetamine is a man-made drug, so this is easy to produce with 15 different chemicals. The main ingredient is the pseudoephedrine or Sudafed, which is cooked with chemicals found at a hardware store: red phosphorus, iodine, ammonia, paint thinner, ether, Drano, lithium from batteries, etc. That's also why if maybe you have allergies and you're over the age of 18 and you went to Walgreens to get some Sudafed, they're going to take your ID and make sure that 1, you're of age, and 2, they can actually keep track of how much Sudafed that you're buying. The investment of $100 or $150 when you make up this methamphetamine can be worth over $10,000 worth of the drug. Now, I know that college can be taking a lot of money out of you, but I do not recommend doing this as your part-time job. Each kilogram of meth produced is 5 to 7 kilograms of chemical waste that is dumped down the drain. The byproduct is a toxic gas which causes fires or explosions. It can release high levels of dopamine when somebody takes methamphetamine. There's that word again, that dopamine, that happy hormone. It's associated with pleasurable or rewarding experiences. You could feel dopamine when you're hanging out with your bestest friends, or you're shopping at your favorite store, or you're visiting your favorite restaurant. But this is kind of to the extreme, pleasurable or rewarding experiences. And because meth releases that hormone, the user then feeling a wakefulness, physical activity, and your decreased appetite, it can feel very addictive. The methods of use: people snort it, inject it, smoke it, ingest it, and the euphoria, or essentially the feeling of it, can last up to 12 hours. Higher doses of methamphetamine can cause irritability, insomnia, anxiety, hallucinations, confusion, increased aggression. Okay, so somebody's feeling these happy hormones, they take too much methamphetamine and they start to get irritable. They can't sleep. They're feeling paranoia, or the extremes of being worried. Even higher doses can cause hypothermia, convulsions, and can lead to death. and you're saying, wait a second, hypothermia, that's what I feel when I walk out in the middle of winter in Iowa. Essentially, yes. So our heart is not pumping the blood effectively, and it can cause hypothermia, convulsions in our body, and we'll talk about that here in just a second. When the body is stimulated by meth, it causes an irreversible damage to some of our internal organs, such as your heart, because you have an increase in heart rate and blood pressure. It damages the blood vessels in the brain. It can cause strokes, irregular heart beating, and causing a collapse or death. So this is an easily abused drug that can have some very high negative effects. So methamphetamine, the high agitation is common after the rush and can lead to violent behavior. Methamphetamine causes physiological dependency and hallucinations, like I talked about. Meth make someone dig at my own, or meth will make me dig at my own skin. So somebody's feeling super anxious. They may start to dig at their own skin. You'll never worry about lipstick or teeth again, it says. So maybe you've heard of people that use meth having kind of meth teeth. Their rotted teeth, things like that, picking at their face and digging at their face, just feeling super high anxiety, paranoia, like we talked about, insomnia, aggressive behaviors. Depressants are the opposite of stimulants. So we just got done talking about different stimulants. The stimulants being methamphetamine, the Ritalin or the Adderall. We can talk about, caffeine and nicotine, but depressants, these are ones that slow down your central nervous system. So these are going to be the opposite of the stimulants. We've got alcohol. We have barbiturates, which induce sleep. Benzodiazepines, which reduce anxiety, or Rifanol or GHB. Depressants, they reduce the central nervous system activity. We've talked about the central nervous system. Remember, that's your brain and spinal cord. It slows down bodily processes like heart rate and respiration rate, so your breathing. It induces the feeling of relaxation. It can produce the rush of pleasure. In high doses, depressants can kill by stopping vital bodily functions like breathing. So in high doses, depressants can really slow down your breathing enough where there's not enough oxygen getting to your brain and your extremities, which can cause death. Alcohol is the most socially accepted form of drug use. The second most used psychoactive drug. So caffeine and alcohol are the most psychoactive drugs that have been used. Alcohol impairs parts of the brain that are responsible for controlling inhibitions, and it results in the loss of self-control and sometimes more aggressive behavior. So this is impairing the brain, so it's changing what the brain is doing and controlling. Maybe it has less self-control, sometimes more aggressive behavior. People may do so or say things that they wouldn't normally say when they're intoxicated. High blood alcohol levels the BOC, the high blood or the blood alcohol content, can lead to poor judgment, loss of coordination, and even a coma or death. So it says, what do we mean by one drink? So these are a couple of pictures that, although they may be different sizes, they are considered one drink. So one 12-ounce can of beer has about the same amount of alcohol as 4 ounces of wine or 1 ounce of whiskey. So this is just remembering that even though the different ounces of the alcohol are different, that the content of alcohol in those drinks can vary. The BAC, which is the blood alcohol content, is a measure of how much blood or how much alcohol is in the bloodstream. Okay, and this kind of table here on the right-hand side, it does a good job describing the effects and what the blood alcohol levels kind of coordinate with that. Okay, so at 0.05, blood alcohol level, someone may have a lowered alertness. Remember, this is a depressant. It releases of the inhibitions and the impaired judgment. After 0.1%, they have slow reaction times, impaired motor function, which means like walking, talking, grabbing things, motor functions, and they have less caution. 0.15%, they have large, consistent increases in reaction time. So while the 0.1 has slower reaction time, this is a large and consistent increase in that reaction time. So it's a longer reaction time. At 0.2, marked depression in sensory and motor capability. So this is not talking about like depression as the mental illness. This is talking about depression, so a less sensory and motor capability. At 0.25%, there's severe motor disturbance and staggering sensory perceptions, greatly impaired. 0.3%, there are no comprehension of the world around them. 0.35, this can be considered surgical anesthesia, which has minimal level causing death. And 0.4% is about half of those at this level may pass away. So this is also just like a public service announcement for you in the future, or maybe a friend, if you see them kind of going overboard with the alcohol consumption, that there comes a time where medical or other help may be involved to make sure that we don't get to those higher percentages that may cause death. This is 0.8 or 0.08 is considered the legal intoxication for most states. So that is before this highlighted part here. The metabolism decreases BAC by 0.015 per hour. So per hour, you can decrease by 0.015. The average male reaches this legal intoxication rate after 3 to 4 standard drinks in 1 hour, and the average female reaches that 0.08 BAC level after 2 or 3 standard drinks in 1 hour. This obviously depends on the not just on the sex of the individual, but also the height, the weight, the age, etc. Time course of intoxication. So a typical night out. So it says the BAC is 0.1 to 0.2. That's about 10 standard drinks. When you return to BAC of 0, it will take more than 10 hours after your last drink, and the impairment will last for 20 to 30 hours. So this is kind of after the night out. So this is after those 10 drinks. It says drives home drunk at 0.165. Obviously, we don't ever encourage that. Get an Uber, call a friend. Do not drive drunk. At 2 a.m., they go to bed. Their blood alcohol level is 0.15. They are sleeping, and then they go to the bathroom. They are restless. As you can see, their BAC levels are going down, but it's not until the afternoon where that hungover impairment continues, and we start to see a little bit more of those effects. But as you can see, it takes about, like it says, 20 to 30 hours for that impairment to officially go away. Not really sure why that's in there. I think it's a video, but we're not going to watch it today. All right, so fetal alcohol syndrome. We talked a little bit about this with our pregnancy section, and this is what happens to the fetal brain when the mother is drinking while pregnant. So it says don't drink while pregnant. The left brain over here, not necessarily just the left brain, but the brain on the left hand side of the screen is a 6-week-old baby, normal brain, and we're talking about a 6-week like out of the womb baby. And then we have a 6-week-old baby that had fetal alcohol syndrome when born. Essentially, the mother consumed alcohol while pregnant, and as you can see, there's major developmental stages for the brain that are just missing. These are the barbiturates, which are sedating drugs that are either used medically or they can be abused, that induce drowsiness, slur speech, impair motor skills, impair your memory or your judgment. This is a synergistic effect when combined with alcohol that can lead to respiratory failure and death. I'm just going to highlight that part. When combined with alcohol, it can produce a physical or a psychological dependence in several weeks. Withdrawal can cause REM, rebound nightmares, hallucinations, disorientation, or even life-threatening convulsions. The most common, which is less safe than benzodiazepines, which are these down here, that are the most common type of this drug. Okay, it is medically abused and can be, causing that drowsiness, that slur in speech, impairing motor skills, and impairing memory, and it can cause respiratory failure and even death. These next ones are benzodiazepines, which I can never say correctly, so I apologize right now. Benzodiazepines, which are the anxiety drugs either used medically or abused. They induce drowsiness, slur speech. They can impair motor skills, both memory and judgment. They can affect your body's respiratory system as well when combined with alcohol. They can produce a physical and psychological dependence in several weeks. They are safer than the previous slide, and here's a couple of the common ones you've maybe heard of, like Xanax or Valium, that are common. These are those anxiety drugs. So if somebody is actually dealing with diagnosed anxiety, some of these medications may help relieve some of those symptoms. Here's a couple other depressants. You have the date rape drug you maybe heard of, or the GHB, which is another date rape drug. That are, the first one is not legal in the US, Schedule 1 in the US as well on the bottom one here. The first date rape drug on the top is used for sexual assault, most likely, because when dissolved, it doesn't dissolve with a color or taste. As a capsule here, as you can see on the top, it has a blue core. It provides a sedative effect of amnesia, so like not remembering, muscle relaxation, and slowed psychomotor responses. The effects can appear 15 to 20 minutes after the administration of these drugs, and they can last up to 4 to 6 hours and have residual effects for up to 12. Okay, so this is that date rape drug. This is the reminder that you're not supposed to take drinks from strangers or never leave your drink at a bar or at a party unattended and then take another drink of it again. Just a couple of those rules of thumb. The other date rape drug here on the bottom is a liquid or a white powder that is dissolved in liquid, and it has a salty taste. It produces a sedative effect again. It results in amnesia and an increase in sexual drive. The effects can appear 15 to 20 minutes, as same as the top one here, and after administration it can last up to 3 to 6 hours. All right, narcotics. These are specific drugs that are obtainable only by prescription and are used to relieve pain. Okay, so morphine, heroin, oxycodone, these are used sometimes for like major surgical events or things like that where there could be a large amount of pain. This is not something you would take for your average headache. And I think we talk a little bit more about those next time we meet, which will be a week from today for lecture. But that's all I have for this PowerPoint today. Does anybody have any questions over the psychoactive drugs that we just discussed? All right, you can find that PowerPoint on my Wartburg. You do have a lecture assignment that goes along with that. I have one more activity. We're going to use that Mentamir again, and I will pull it up here when I say present. All right, so you guys, if you want to participate, if you can go to that menti.com and use the code on the top. I think I just have 3 questions, I think, unless I'm starting. Let's see here, I'm going to stop my share really quick. Make sure I have the right part up. All right, so menti.com using the code 9432027. If you'd like to participate. It says, what is something that you're looking forward to this week? Being done with assignments, nice. Friday, yeah. Close to being done, yeah, definitely. The Bachelorette on Tuesday, yes. Taking a nap with your dog, that sounds like a lot of fun. Finishing your paper, sleeping, good. I'll give it about 30 seconds if anybody else wants to join in on the discussion. What we're looking forward to this week, relaxing when the semester ends, that's a good one. Yeah. As a reminder, whenever you start to get stressed, just remind yourself to have something to look forward to, whether that be a walk outside if it's not too cold, or something, you know, a little bit more end goal, like, oh, it's got to make it to Friday, or just got to finish this paper. Just don't forget to think about those things as you move forward. The next one is, what is your favorite family holiday tradition? Or if you don't have a family holiday tradition, one that you would like to have. Eating together, definitely. Dinner with the whole family. Watching White Christmas, Christmas Eve appetizers. That's a good idea. Eating steak on Christmas. Ice skating on Thanksgiving. Dress up kind of like you do for Halloween, but on Christmas. That's cool. Siblings sleep over on Christmas Eve. Decorating the Christmas tree. Making cookies with grandma. Eating all the delicious food, being with family, spending time with my sister. That sounds like a lot of fun. Good. I like Christmas Eve appetizers. That's a good idea. I might have to take that idea. Or eating steak. I really like steak. Christmas decorating. Good. All right. Here we go. And the last one is, if we have any questions about the final, remember these are anonymous, so I can't see who asks the question. If you have a question about the final, put it in. That's what I like to see, no questions from them. Show up here. Is it the same number of questions as normal? So it's 100 points. I could look up exactly how many questions it is if we wanted to wait just 1 second. It's 100 points. We're gonna have to stop share in order to do that. Unless you guys just want me to all show you the final right now, but that would be pretty exciting. All right, so there. I think it says 25 questions, unless I'm miscounting, so give or take 1 or 2. Has a multiple choice, matching, ordering, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 essay questions. Those essay questions range from 8 to 5 points. multiple choice are anywhere between 1 and 4 points. The ordering questions can be 9 points, 4 points, things like that. So that's to answer that question. Another question about the final. I'm going to say that was answered. How many short answer questions? So I think I just said it was 5 or 6 short answer, and they range anywhere between 8 and 5 points. Will it have relatively the same amount of questions as the other tests? Yes, still worth 100 points. When you look at your grade or your syllabus, if you're kind of interested in this, so our normal exams are all 100 points each, and they're worth 15% each, but then they go into our exam category as a weighted part, but then your final exam, it's also worth 15% of your grade, but it's a separate category. Are there going to be any extra credit points? I don't have any on there right now, but I can reconsider. How many short answer questions? Yeah, that seems to be a common question. Let me refer back one more time to make sure I have the correct number for you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 essay questions. And those essays are not like you have to write 3 paragraphs or anything like that. We just choose that essay question space so that you have enough space to write in. Can we get old exams for revision? For that question, I would have to reopen your exams, and I think you'd have to look at the lockdown browser. But it's not really what I want to do for this exam. But what I do recommend is looking at the study guide on my Wartburg. You can also look at the other study guides if you still have them. But that study guide on my work that I made for the final exam, it walks through every single chapter, and it says what you need to know from each chapter. So that I find that fairly helpful. But I don't think I'm going to give access to those exams again. Will there be extra credit questions? I'll consider it. Normally on a written exam, I do extra credit, but because this year they're all online and you can have your books and your notes in front of you, I haven't been doing extra credit on exams because I consider that your extra credit is that I know that you can use your book and your notes on them. Will it be a majority of the content we are currently learning or an even mix of everything that we have learned? It's about 25% from each section. So we have 4 total exams. You had exam 1, 2, and 3, and then you have a final. And so I think it's 25% from 1, 25% from 2, 25% from 3, and 25% of this new material that we're learning right now. All right. If there's a question I didn't answer, feel free to shoot me an email at any time. You can reach out to Haley Barkow if you need studying help. She's a great resource. Use that study guide on my Wartburg, or just get in contact with me. As a reminder, as you can see in the chat here, email me if you are not comfortable with coming to lab on Wednesday. If you do not email me, I expect you guys to come to your specific times unless you're in quarantine. On December 23rd, it's the opposite. Email me if you'd like to be in person. On November 20th, we're not having class. December 3rd is the final. And there's a study guide on my Wartburg. Any other questions? All right. Well, that's all I have for you guys. Have a great rest of your day.
I have a question. Well, it's not a question. I have one assignment that has not been graded. I'm not sure if you
Hi,
can.
Barbara.
Hi. What am I even saying?
I
Oh, I was
can't
saying.
hear
You can
you,
hear me?
unfortunately. I can see your mouth moving, but I can't hear you. You can if you want to write it in the chat, I can wait. I have a different question. I have one assignment that is not graded. Okay, yeah. Which one do I need to still grade? It was probably one that I opened up for you and then, yes, okay. The bones quiz. Okay, yep, I will take care of that for you. Thank you for reminding me. We'll see ya.